Hi, and welcome to this episode of Dynamics Update. We are back after a little break, and we are going to talk today about the version 10.0.38. And with me, as usual, I have Gustav Sundblad. Hello, Gustav.
Hello, Johan. How are you?
I am fine, thank you. I'm fine, thank you. And we have a big update to look forward to, and a lot of updates today. So I thought I'd actually start this one with the biggest news of them all. We will soon be out of job because Microsoft is changing the release cadence. We are no longer getting 8 updates a year. We are from now on, we are only getting 4 updates a year. And also an important thing here, the update this time will be called Calendar Year 24 Q1. That is the name of the update.
Makes sense.
Yes, obvious.
Clear,
but then you think, okay, so we have 4 updates a year and I can skip 3 of them. That's really nice. No, that's not how this works.
And if you think that's nice, maybe you should reconsider.
Yeah, exactly. Unfortunately, you are only allowed to skip 1.
Yeah.
So I'm going to jump up on my little soapbox here and just stick my neck out a bit and say that I prefer 8 updates over 4 updates. So why do I do that? Well, there are a couple of reasons. First of all, we are not getting fewer things updated. We will only get them spaced out further, which means that every single update will be a larger one in comparison to how it was before with 8 updates a year.
Yeah.
So we will get more new feature in every single update, which means that we will never have an episode where we don't have anything to talk about. But that also means that more code will be updated in your environment every single time. And also, since you can only skip 1, that might in some cases be an issue because you might end up in a situation where you would have to need to skip another one, but that won't be possible. The other reason why I think 8 is better than 4 is because of practice. We get to practice deploying updates 8 times a year instead of 4 times a year, which means that it will be more of a non-issue when we do it. It will be more of a just like, okay, so this is what we do basically almost every month anyway, so it doesn't make any difference, which means that eventually we will get good at it and it won't be an issue. It also means that every single time we will get more features that are set to on by default, which means that there will be more features that we need to go through and validate and make sure that they work.
Yeah. So I share your concern about the specifically the exercise part, the practice part, where I think doing it more often gives you a better chance to kind of build something automated around it. If we only do it twice a year, everyone's gonna be okay. Let's just do it manually. But also, I think I'm not that worried about the 4 updates. Depending on if you have a proper procedure in place with testing, it's more on like the business alignment and business planning that I always strive for to avoid doing those customizations, which might become a problem down the line. It's easier to say, okay, look here, we have the release planner. We can what you're requesting here is coming soon, maybe next release or the release after that. It makes it even more important to have a longer planning horizon for your business to adhere to, and I think that might be a more tricky point that might lead to more solutions that are custom in the end. So we'll see. The jury is still out, and on our podcast here, I think we just need to extend. Either we should start with like investigative journalism and do wall wrapping and stuff like that. On the dynamic side, I'm not sure. Or we can do more special episodes and interviews, hopefully. So hopefully that will still mean, or we need to maybe split it up. I think for this 38, there was so many different small and big features that I wanted to bring up that maybe the half an hour that we tried to stick to doesn't cut it anymore. So we'll maybe divide it up into 2 episodes. Who knows?
Yes, and also one other thing that I need to point out as well is that if you have a feature that you're waiting for, that you need, it will take longer to get it.
Yeah, exactly. So either that's okay as long as you know about it, or these little solutions and nifty like workarounds will pop up, and they are harder, like weed in your backyard. They are harder to get rid of than you would suspect.
Absolutely. So what's your first one?
So without any priority here, I just started with finance, actually. I'm not a finance consultant, big disclaimer here, but I've spent a lot of time as a technical consultant, as well as helping out with reconciliation, balancing customer and vendor balances between payment journals, etc. And I noticed one feature, which is net customer and vendor balance. Basically, it enables netting capability between open balances on customer and vendor side. So basically, if they all amount to zero, the settlement process becomes easier. I haven't gone into this and how it works. I bring it up because I spend so much time helping finance people out with this. So anyone out there working with balancing, you should investigate this feature to see if it can help you reduce complexity and maybe save some time. There's also a feature for cash and bank statements, like settling bank statements with open customer invoices directly. So it seems these two features might make your balancing and your reconciliation process more efficient, I hope. So those two are worth looking into.
Yeah, sure. So my next one is actually also quite the big one, and it has to do with Dualwrite. We have mentioned Dualwrite a couple of times, and it's sort of the go-to solution for moving data to and from, moving data between CRM and F&O. And there is an issue with Dualwrite. There are actually a couple of issues with Dualwrite, but one of the main issues is actually that it's only synchronous, which means that in some cases, when you do enter something in F&O, you actually have to wait for it to be written to CE before you actually can save the form in F&O. Meaning that, for instance, when you add an order and so on, the UI tends to get a bit sluggish because you need to wait for CE to do the same thing. I'm not saying that CE by default is slow. I'm just saying that there is a latency between the two systems, and it's sort of built in, so to speak.
Yeah, of course.
But what's happening now is that Microsoft is building in an asynchronous option into Dualwrite. They mentioned the word eventually consistent, meaning that so what you do in F&O will be saved in F&O, and then it will eventually be synced over to CE. So, of course, not all things can be set to asynchronous because some things actually need to be. So, I would say like, master data, for instance, group names and things that appear in drop-down boxes and so on the other system. I would say those need to be synchronous because they need to be there as soon as possible. But for instance, sales orders is one of those things that, if we add sales orders to F&O, it isn't that crucial that they end up in CE at the exact same moment as they are in F&O. It's okay if they get synced during the night or in an hour or whatever, because everyone knows that it might take some time, and they don't expect it to turn up the second they click the button.
That's a big whatever. That depends on the case, right? You always, but it's worth mentioning because everyone thinking I need this ASAP real time. In many cases, like 9 out of 10 times, you don't actually need it real time. You need it as fast as you need it, but it doesn't have to be that synchronous as you describe. But I think if you ask salespeople, I think they will object to getting it once a night. So
yeah, but you also need to figure out here is that when it comes to dependencies needs to be there, because what happens if dependencies are, we have a retry solution, which means that if we have a dependency that hasn't been synced and we try to add like a sales order, for instance, and say the product isn't there, so we can't push the sales order to CE because the product isn't in CE, for instance, then we can't create the sales order. Then it will actually wait for that to happen, and it will retry again. But what also happens is that we will also get an error log saying that these transactions weren't able to be pushed over to CE. So there need to be a process to verify that there are not things stuck in this queue.
Yeah, I think that's the main point. I mean, what you describe is the major pain point of basically all integrations, like dependencies and the possibility to retry and queue. But it always boils down to that there has to be a queue, like a classic service bus message queue, but who is monitoring it and who is responsible for it. And if this works as well as I hope it does, it opens up a whole box of possibilities for much better usage and like believed performance of the system as well. But as you say, the devil is in the details here, the complexity of these prerequisites that need to be in place and the sequencing that needs to be in place. It's basically a whole integration implementation, but it will be interesting to see how it works.
Yep.
How well
absolutely.
It works.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. So my next one is actually one that has to do with things that are being removed. So one of the features that is being removed in the March 2024 version is actually the ability to add external users from another Azure AD without adding them as guests. So before, you could actually manually go in and tell the system that I need to add a user with this email address, and it needs to use this Azure AD provider. So you add the URL for the provider, and then you add the domain for that user afterwards. Now, what we need to do in order to get this to work, we need to make sure that all of the users have a guest account in the home tenant of FNO. So we can't really do cross-tenant logins anymore without a proper guest account.
Yeah. Makes sense from a security perspective, of course, to someone actually approved this, and it's not only the functional consultant who added it in the user info table.
Exactly.
So it's important. It's very important not to to miss it and to overlook, because I suspect there are many such users out there that need to be properly invited to your.
Yes, I'm just wondering how this will work, because I am guessing there won't be a UI in FNO to invite users. That means that you need to invite them. You need to have IT invite them first.
Yeah.
Because if you use, for instance, SharePoint, as soon as you add someone to SharePoint that is in the correct tenant, an email will go out to those users and say you are invited to this tenant as a guest user.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing that this won't happen from FNO. As I said, I don't know. I'm just guessing here.
Yeah.
But because I know for a fact that we have had users that have limitations on external users being able to access their tenant. So that's basically the same thing. They have a policy in place which says if you're not a guest user or you're not a user from this tenant, you are not allowed to do anything here. And before we figured that out, that all of the users that had been added to their SharePoint worked, but the other users didn't. Took some time to understand why it didn't work, because we didn't realize that they were automatically invited as guest users. But so with that being said, have a look out for this. If you're not able to add external users, that might be an issue. And one more thing, I know for a fact that there are customers of mine that have multiple Azure AD tenants. So they need to figure out how this works in order to get it to work.
But it makes a little sense to move, because it is moved to Azure and Entra ID rather than having it as a sub directory within FNO. So it makes sense to have all your directory clearances handled the same way. It's just interesting to see how many will log on and say, I can't access, how many support tickets it will drive in the client's IT operations. Might be a nice gesture to send to your operations to say, hey, this is going to happen. So be prepared.
Yes. So,
all right.
What's your next one?
This one is a bit complicated. It's compound surcharges, and it ties in a little bit. We didn't bring this up, I think, the rebate management and a lot of new functionality or improved functionality to allow for complex scenarios for rebate handling, or in this case, surcharges, auto charges, basically. So what it's added is several types of compound surcharges, where you can do sequencing, compound, value base. There's a ton of settings that you can use here to calculate your charges based on percentage up to a specific point. It can be as complex as you want it to be, but I know there are many complicated scenarios out there globally that I think might benefit from this, where you need to calculate specific charges based on, well, it can't be a fixed charge. It can't be just a percentage of the order total. It has to be a percentage of the VAT, unless it's snowing outside, and then it has to be like this. It's a lot of different complex rules out there. So I implore you to look into this feature, because it needs to be set up in a test environment and really evaluated, because you can configure a lot here, and it can probably bite you in the behind if you don't do it right. But it opens up a new, together with a lot of stuff that has come to the recent years, like the landed cost, gives you a way to be really, really detailed in how you track your costs and how you add your charges to your transactions. So compound surcharges, that's a big feature.
Yep. All right. My next one is actually sort of the same as the one I had before. It also has to do with Microsoft Entra ID. There is actually, it's not a bug, it's just an undocumented feature that happened to slip out in this 30.37 version. So what happens is that if you spin up a new DevBox after November 15th, there is a magic cutoff date there. Then when you go into the user management, you won't be able to add users from Entra ID. You will not be able to import them. You can add them manually, but you can't import them. So the reason for this is there is actually a certificate in every DevBox, or there used to be a certificate in every DevBox, which means that it can talk to Entra ID by default. That certificate has been removed as of November 15th. There is a link in the show notes for this podcast where you can actually see how to fix it. So you can actually put it back. You can actually put the connection to Entra ID back into the system. But that also means that if you do that, you need to do it manually in that case. I mean, we have some customers which use, in some cases for like system testing and so on, they use dev boxes instead of tier 2 environments for cost reasons. And in that case, it's a good idea to do this, because then you will need to manage users in a simpler way.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, good catch. I have there are so many features in this release. This is kind of a precursor to how it's going to be next year when we have these smaller windows and much more features. My next one is it's actually two. There is two on-hand changes coming in here. One being the app, the mobile app, which is in preview, of course, but it's basically a Power App built by Microsoft. Using virtual entities to check on hand from F&O, from supply chain. I think it's nice. It's like a proof of concept, or it's usable fully, of course, but you can also see how it's built and understand how it's working to get on hand directly from F&O. And again, it's a Power App, so you can publish it to anyone to fulfill any on hand scenario, and it checks directly off F&O. But if you, like me, love the inventory visibility app, which is also a nice little feature we brought up a couple of times here before, they have also enabled some features or additional functionality in visibility for finding on hand by attribute. So they basically enhanced the search capabilities using APIs. You have a query with product search that you can use via API. And they've also enabled logging for this, so you can like gain some insights in how your visibility app is being used and what products are being asked for the most, for instance. So basically, you have two different options here, where if you need to support on hand outside of F&O or to publish on hand to your sales team or to third-party systems, you can use visibility app with API, and you can connect it with your front-end e-commerce, and you can open up a couple of scenarios where you can search for products not using the product number. You can search for attributes, and you can get a list of products. Give me all black jackets in this particular size on this particular size, and then that are available to me, so I can see what's actually on hand. So there's a lot of different functionality. You need to look at what use case you are interested in. But if you're already using visibility, then you should probably keep using that to offset your performance and keep asking visibility for your own hand rather than F&O directly. But it's nice to have options, right, Johan?
Yes, options is always good.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. So my final one is actually the one that I got from you. And it's the fact that we have now enabled bulk editing in the grids. We have talked a lot about the new modern grids in F&O. I would say that it's gotten a bit too much attention. But I mean, the thing is, there was room for improvement. So I'm guessing that is also why.
Yeah.
So we are now able to do bulk editing, so we can basically edit multiple lines at the same time. I would just hope that they would implement the modern grid in more places where it's not. So
yeah, and I think this feature uses like a button or some kind of feature to mass update this particular field with the same value. And I've seen this customization around because of the grid. Well, you have to. Well, I think it's fast to open in Excel and do stuff like that, but it does solve a specific scenario in some cases. So it's nice to be able to use it. I would say.
Yes.
That's cool. I still have a lot of, but I have to pick my favorites. That's the whole point of this show. But it was harder this time than it usually is. There's so much, and you see Copilot coming in a lot as well. And I'm pretty sad about it because Copilot right now is there's a lot of regional limits towards US, and I mainly work in European sites right now, at least. So I can't use as much or test or play around with Copilot as much as I would like in F&O. Just to name a few, there is product inquiry in-app Copilot chat functionality. Still the same, like enables you to ask your Power virtual agent to search for products that are available, perhaps. There is, which is a nice thing, there is a generation of product enrichment content for e-commerce sites with Copilot in Site Builder. For those of you using B2B or B2C Site Builder, the headless commerce, there is, I'm guessing here, because I haven't been able to try it out, I'm guessing it looks at product dimensions, like whatever it can get a hold of, and generates suggestions for product enrichment for selling texts, basically. And we have seen some horrible stories before with AI generated selling texts for products. So try it out and ensure that your master data is properly updated and correct. Then maybe you can get some efficiency out of this. But as soon as it's enabled in the European region, I will test it out and report back here. I have one final one. I just wanted to mention this. It's a small thing. It's for retail as well. It's for pools. It's cash management for multiple currencies in a store. Basically declaring a start amount, tender removal, all of these things that you need to do in a store on a day-to-day basis now support multiple currencies. So you can manage cash across various currencies in a store. And this sounds like a small thing because mainly you operate in the same currency. But in Sweden, at least, I'm guessing this is true for many countries. We have border stores, stores that reside close to Norway in this case. I know we've had a lot of where we say, or the customer says that we allow them to pay in their own currency, and then they do some kind of calculation, and you do currency markup, etc. You see this across the many tourist streets as well. And I know there's been special handling of how the cash management works in those stores due to limitations in pools before. So this enables it to be more streamlined. So it's a nice thing, maybe not relevant for all, but it's a nice thing to make it easier for the border stores and the tourist stores to compete.
Yes. So with that, I actually think that we are done for today.
Great. And read up on the notes, because there was like a 10 or 12 features that we couldn't fit in, but they were all interesting.
Yes, absolutely. So until the next time,
Take care.
bye-bye.
Bye-bye.